I was interested in, and maybe most everybody else was, in what was occurring at the feet with the use of the edge of...
What was occurring with his, what was the work I was doing with his feet?
What was the purpose of using, the work
Aha. So this is really Dr. Feldenkrais' invention, and he called it a false floor. But the underlying idea for him is that, you remember the other day I said that dealing with gravity occupies 90% of the activity of the brain at any time. Of course, in standing, not if you're lying. Well, Feldenkrais made the leap from that the brain is so oriented toward standing that whether it's lying or standing, if you perturb the foot as if in standing, that the nervous system is responding as if it's standing. So it responds to the board, the false floor. The foot responds by what? By pushing against, right? As if the same that we do when we seek the floor when we come to standing. So, thus, I'm using the board to replicate that interaction, or it's not really replicate. It's so we can have that interaction as if in standing, but without all of his anxiety about standing, the feeling of falling to his left as he has a lot of the time, and a lot of things. If you think here's the foot, the last stuff that I was doing was giving his brain the notion that it was standing on an unstable surface. So I don't know if you know, I went to the outside edge, I went to the inside edge, just the toes. So how would if you were just standing on your toes, you would, and you were in a dark room, and your eyes were closed, you would seek, where is there more of a surface for me to stand on? The same if you rolled to the outside edge of the foot, right? You would feel unstable, and you would quickly try to come back, right, to finding the more secure footing. So what I did was there towards the end, I used the board to give the brain that idea of reacting. I mean, I did all the work myself, in a sense. I went to the outside edge, the inside edge, if you look at the film, and I think I did the toes, maybe I did the heel, and then I came and went, and I tried, and I did that a couple times. Give him there's the floor, right? Mm-hmm. There's the floor. Now, why doesn't he feel the pain?
You also went in between the bones with the edge of the foot.
No, I did when I did, yeah. Yes. So that was, again, the same idea. I'm trying, look, what children do all the time, right? You stand on a very narrow surface, right? Like walking on a wall, right? Well, so I'm trying, but there's only one, a person walking on a tightrope will tell you there's only one way to do it successfully. In other words, where the rope should be between the toes, there's only one way, and where on the heel, right? Now, so I did that with Bob. I did that but I did many different, I also did in the very beginning, if you watch, I went from the heel to this toe, and I went from the heel, I did like that. Right? So again, trying to just remind his brain of those lines, because again, the infant has to do the same thing. There's a whole process by which the infant finally finds the right way to organize the foot to stand. And it's only later that we can do it incorrectly. right? Because we figured out how to use all of this extra effort that we're talking about all the time is socialization. In other words, it's our way of coping with the cultural norms or the ways in which I need to protect myself, the ways in which I need to contort myself in order to follow the rules or follow parental commands. But in the very beginning, we're much closer to the ideal. And then we learn how to use the musculature to compensate for the instability that we create by falling more to the outside edge of the foot, or walking on the toes more, walking on more on one, or waping more on one leg than the other. An infant would fall. The infant would just fall to the right, fall to the left, fall forward. And they figure out they don't compensate for, they don't address that falling by clenching their muscles, right? And say, oh, I'm going to walk like this. You don't see infants doing that. You actually see them walking in a way where you think, oh, yeah, they're going to fall, and they look, and they stick out the arms to right? They walk like this, which is what you see. You also see chimps walk like that, right? But you'll see infants in the beginning to increase their stability, right?
And did you direct yourself that way because of the knowledge of the neuropathy?
Yeah, this is the question I can't completely address satisfactorily. No, I didn't address myself. No, it was a more functional point of view. I did not address myself in that way to him because of the neuropathy. I addressed myself to him because I saw, one, how unstable he was, and two, because I know that the neuropathy, that with the neuropathy, he has a lack of proprioceptive feedback about where his feet are, how he's standing on his feet, and I felt maybe I can give him a little bit more stability by addressing him, as you called it, in that way. Is there a change in the nerve endings, or is the change happening?
It's the loss of circulation, so there's nothing feeding the nerves, and also the pain receptors are in the capillaries.
In the capillaries?
Yeah, so loss of all that creates pain also, and just ischemia itself, loss of circulation causes pain.
Is it permanent damage?
From the diabetes, it's progressive, yes. It moves up the leg.
No, he said, I have no pain. I still don't feel the foot, but I have the absence of pain. He says it's very strange.
So my question to you is, what did you do to cause him to not feel pain if he's got the nerves there? That's the thing I don't understand.
Well, what I would say is that we renewed the relationship between his body image and his feet.
My question has to do more so your starting point. I noticed, despite the problems he had with his foot, the obvious balance issues, you started with his neck.
Yeah.
And I noticed with most of our FIs, we seem to start with the neck. Is that generally just because the neck in relationship
I wanted
to
to
the rest
get
of the body?
so I began by rolling his head. Rolling his head, or rolling, if I were to roll any of your heads, we would get an indication, or it would be a good representation of, it would tell me a lot about your organization. If I rolled his head, and which direction did his head roll in? If I'm using just, 1/100 of a gram of pressure, his head turned to the left, right? that confirmed for me what I thought I saw, because as soon as he came in, he really did not want to be standing anymore. And he said that it was an effort for him to stand. So I told him he could sit down. But, and that was probably before everybody was in the room. So I only saw him standing for maybe, 45 seconds or something. And, but what I thought I saw was that he was falling to his left. Okay? Now, what happens to the tonus of the neck when you fall to the left? Right? If you imagine that the whole person is falling to the left, right? This side of the neck is grabbing, right? Which is leaving the head is, even though he probably when we were to watch him standing, we would see that he's pulling his head to the right in order to balance himself a little bit. So he's not completely just falling into the cane. But so he I could turn his head easily to the left, hardly at all to the right. Right? Did you see that? So then okay, there's a difference. And what is the kind of the means of the interaction is facilitating or creating the conditions for his nervous system to feel differences. So, now I've got something. Can he feel the difference between the head to the left and the head to the right? No, he couldn't, right? But I did it a couple more times, and he did. And then I found that the chest turned, right, and the shoulder, one shoulder. And I asked him to feel these distinctions, these differences, how the left shoulder was pushed into the table and the right shoulder lifted easily, so that, so one, I'm introducing to him the idea that I would like him to look for these differences, whether it's unconsciously or consciously. I'd like him to look for differences, and that's my language. That's the way I'm interacting. That's our MO. That's the way, that's how I'm going to be working here. And, which is, I did with the legs. I kept going back and forth, asking him to feel, right? The lengthening of the arms, to feel that, that the right arm lengthened easily, right? Connecting to the left leg, and I showed him how that worked. And then the right, it was non-existent, fundamentally non-existent. It was like, firstly, the arm couldn't lengthen very much, but why can't that arm lengthen very much? Because it's never getting this. He's never pushing into the right leg, right? He's never doing exactly what you were doing in the Awareness Through Movement lesson this morning. Do you remember? I asked you to flex the foot and think of the diagonal shoulder. But he's not doing that because he's never standing on his right leg. So he's never pushing into the right leg or pushing off the right leg. Neither of those is he doing. It wasn't because of not wanting to touch his feet, though I was concerned, would my touching perturb his pain, which is why I asked him to please tell me. But I wanted to see if maybe there were other aspects of his organization that were so paramount, so influential, that it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter at all how I improved the feet. That if that other stuff was disorganized and I came down and worked with the feet, it could be what Feldenkrais would say, like pissing sugar into the ocean to sweeten it. Right? So I got to make sure that that he can use himself fairly symmetrically, right? That he can feel sense these differences. And you saw how he could turn the head to the right, because in order to bring the weight onto the right leg, just as much as he's doing this to keep the weight on the left leg, right? if he's going to successfully bring his weight on the right leg and have two legs to use, he needs to be able to do this. Does that make sense?
Very interesting in the kitchen. We chatted for a while, and he wanted to walk around, and we were chatting, and then he spontaneously went like this. He picked up his left. He just kind of stood like that.
Wow.
He just stood like that. And he said,
stood on just his right leg.
Just the right leg. He said, and then I said, look where you're standing. He says, yeah, if I ever do that, I always do this. So I pointed out, spontaneously. So, and then he started to feel a little pain. I said, sit down, go home, sleep.
Yeah, a little eager beaver.
I wanted to comment a little bit about what we're all wondering about, why the pain went away. Pain, tactile sensation, which is feeling in his feet, and proprioception are carried by different nerves to the brain. And he's had, overwhelming stimulation with pain to his brain, and the new connection with proprioception basically, flooded the...
Might inhibit the pain receptors.
Right, and so he felt less pain because of the new sensation, and I think that might have been it, because increased circulation, which is his issue, would have restored tactile feeling in his feet. So probably proprioception comes from many different areas, your tendons, your nerves, your joints, different receptors, and probably that there was so much input into the brain that it overcame all the pain sensation.
Yep, I think that sounds pretty logical.
I was wondering why at the end you were quick to put his shoes back on.
Because he associates the shoes with security, and I have no interest in challenging him more. He's already challenged, right? So now why challenge him more? What I want to do is create a series of situations in which he can at each juncture feel success, rather than that. In other words, that he can stand and it's easier. He can stand. He can walk with me, right, with having the cane not on the floor, but right. So I just felt it would be unnecessarily too much.
But something you would have done in a later session.
Eventually.
The information that you're providing by the stimulation of his feet with the board, to his brain, to his nervous system, is that something specific to him in his case? That let's say you could press the pinky toe this way. You could do a variety of different movements with the board, with different edges of the board, and different lines of force, maybe up through the skeleton with that. Is what you choose to do in that case different with different people, or is it, in other words, is there sort of a standard?
Yeah. Well, I think there was exactly the same question as yesterday, or very similar, which is so with, I said, this is a basic situation. The kneeling over the table with Sheila is a basic situation that we use. Now, what I did was specific to Sheila. This is a basic situation, lying somebody on their back, working with the board, okay? But what I did with them, or the order, is not even, I would say, let's just let for the moment that what I did with him was particular to him. But the situation is something that we use a great deal. And there are certain aspects of what I did with him having to do with the order of things that I would say are fairly essential. Not so much with the work with Sheila, because there I really was influenced by her the way she was adapting to her. or not adapting, or yeah, but you want it low. You want So, for example, the first thing I did was work with the toes, the bending of the toes with the board, and then the individual toes. And again, if you think of an infant on the stomach, it takes quite some time before the infant is, unless of course a parent stands the kid and right, but otherwise it takes some time before a child begins to push against things with the foot like that, or begin to stand the feet in some kind of organized way. But the toes, they use, as soon as they can get on the stomach, they are doing things with the toes, and they get on the stomach by what, like, I don't know, 3 months, something like that. So early on. And otherwise, even before that, before they're getting on the stomach, it's in some ways, you watch closely, there's very little, maybe 2.5 months. There's just very little understanding of the legs, where they are in space, what they're doing. Very little doing deliberate movements with the legs.